Hello everyone, and welcome to another Helm to Tower video. Now that we're kind of in the back half of Season of the Haunted, I wanted to kind of go through some of the new weapons we got this season, or even some weapons that got buffs from the developers Bungie this season, and I wanted to shout them out as my favorites that you can go grab. If you haven't already, I'm sure there's some people who already have collected all the weapons they can get and found their favorite roles or even crafted some weapons, but you might be a newer player and not really sure what to go for or what to look out for when grabbing some of these weapons. So I thought I'd shout out some stuff that I think are fun and relatively obtainable. These all won't be necessarily end game content weapons, but they can be useful in certain scenarios I'm going to bring up when it comes to making a build. In particular, this season, Solar is a pretty big deal in terms of its new subclass updates. So I wanted to shout out some fun weapons that go alongside that, but I also wanted to shout out a couple other things that I've just been having really fun with and that mesh into some other builds I've been doing. And I wanted to shout out some weapons that might be a little bit more easily attainable, even if you're a free-to-play player or completely new to the game and might not know what to go for. These will just be some easy weapons to kind of find just by playing the game and playing some of the day-to-day activities. So let's just get into the video. So this first weapon I want to shout out is probably not going to be the first choice for some players, but I wanted to shout it out because I think it is an easier obtainable weapon for folks who are playing and starting out for the first time. This weapon will be a solar bow called Strident Whistle that came out this season. It's a solar bow that can roll with this new perk, which I think is one of the best perks for this season in particular, that they've introduced recently, especially when it comes to Solar 3.0 and the new Solar class updates. It is called Incandescent. Now this perk can roll on other weapons that are a part of the season, like Beloved, a solar sniper rifle, and also the Callus mini tool, which is a solar SMG. Incandescent is really great on those, but again, the Strident Whistle bow is solar and it can roll with this Incandescent perk, and all you have to do to get it is just run the basic strikes. So that is available to anybody. I'm fairly certain that some of the current weapons are locked behind Season of the Haunted, so if you don't own Season of the Haunted just yet, you won't have access to some of those weapons that could roll with Incandescent, I'm pretty sure. So I just wanted to shout out the Strident Whistle bow, excuse me. This can roll with Incandescent, which is a super fun perk, again, for solar subclasses. Basically, with this perk, when you defeat an enemy, it will have an explosive effect that applies Scorch, a new ability that is with the solar subclasses, and that'll basically apply this burn to an enemy and they will take damage over time, and if they get enough Scorch on them, they will ignite, which is then makes a larger explosion. So there's tons of ways to build into this. In particular, I have this fun solar warlock build that I've been doing this season where I use the Incandescent Scorch with my weapons on top of the Scorch with some of my abilities like my melee and my grenades to get a looping effect where I basically will use my melee to scorch enemies and get a ton of grenades thanks to my arm exotics on Warlock, where I can make a bunch of solar grenades really quickly. Then I will use my weapons to then apply Scorch to a lot of enemies that will then give me my melee back quicker, because when I defeat Scorch enemies, that recharges my melee abilities, and then that will let me continue that loop of defeating an enemy with a melee, and getting all of those grenades back so I can kind of use them quickly in succession. And the grenades I can use to either heal myself, or I can also use them to stun champions this season with solar grenades, and also heal allies with that healing burst of charging and eating a grenade with the new Heat Rises aspect. So it's pretty fun. I've been having a lot of fun with that again. The Strident Whistle bow can roll on it, and all you need to do is just run some strikes and it has a chance to drop. You can also get it from when you level up, when you rank up at Zavala, he will be able to give you engrams, and you can open those up at him in the tower, and it'll also have a chance to come from those. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested in trying to make a solar build and you need some incandescent weapons, to search out that bow for sure. This next weapon I'm going to be shouting out will be one that you do need to own. The most recent dungeon that came out during the season, the Duality Dungeon. You will need to own that in order to access this next weapon I'm going to be talking about, so just keep that in mind. This weapon is the Unforgiven Void SMG. I've been having a lot of fun with it this season. It does drop from that dungeon at the end of some of the encounters that you'll do in that dungeon. So you will have to complete that, at least complete some of those encounters in the dungeon to get this to drop. But I have a couple rolls of it, and it's been a lot of fun. This well-rounded frenzy one has been pretty all right. I've been using that for great ad clear. But another one I've been using that I've actually really liked a lot is it has feeding frenzy and a new perk they introduced this season called Repulsor Brace. That is unique to void weapons. And basically with this perk, if you defeat a void debuffed enemy, you will be granted an overshield, a void overshield. So that's been a lot of fun. So I've been using it on my Void Titan with my Void Titan build that I've been using since Witch Queen in the last season, which I really like. And basically what I'm able to do now with this SMG on top of my build, I basically am able to throw a grenade, which then applies volatile and gives me volatile rounds, which applies that volatile explosion onto them, and then I can explode them, and that will give me a void overshield all the time. So you can see in this gameplay here, I'm just pretty much constantly having a void overshield because I can use these volatile rounds to great effect and just constantly have an overshield going with this Repulsor Brace perk. So I think it's a lot of fun. It's a really great perk. I definitely hope it comes to more void weapons in the future, but it's definitely been super fun on this Void SMG. I think it can roll on a Void Trace Rifle from this season as well. You probably will need to own the season to get that Void Trace Rifle. I admittedly have not messed around with it that much, but in particular this SMG I've been having a lot of fun with this new perk, so I definitely recommend it. This third weapon is actually going to be one of the exotics I've been having a lot of fun with this season. So keep in mind, if you are trying to get your hands on this and don't have this exotic weapon Yoten yet, you do need to get it from the kiosk with the materials that are required to get that. If you haven't gotten Yoten already, this season with Season of the Haunted, they introduced a exotic catalyst for Yoten. If you don't know what an exotic catalyst is, let me briefly just say they are basically like an extra add-on of either various perks or abilities that'll enhance the exotic even further. These can drop from all kinds of different activities. If you go into your Triumphs menu and look where the even the weapon crafting patterns are in the Triumph menu, you can also see there's an exotic catalyst menu and see that like where you if you're missing these catalysts, you can see where you get them from that menu. But Yoten was given a catalyst this season, and again it goes with the what I talked about earlier, which was the Incandescent perk. It actually gives Yoten that Incandescent perk, so that makes it very destructive in now PvE content. It's a lot of fun because basically now when you shoot a Yoten blast, it'll hit an enemy and then make a much larger explosion than it did before once you have the catalyst on, and then it also applies Scorch to nearby enemies, scorching them, which then again on top of some of the weapons I mentioned earlier, it fits really well into that Warlock build I've been running of applying Scorch to enemies and recharging my abilities faster to get them back and use them in more effect. So it's been a lot of fun. I definitely recommend Yoten this season with that catalyst. If you haven't gotten the Yoten catalyst, definitely go grab that. Now these last two weapons I'm going to talk about you will be able to obtain as a free-to-play player just by doing various activities. This first one I'm going to talk about is maybe if you're looking for some SMGs that are more easily obtainable, like you don't have the duality dungeon, like I was talking about earlier. You can obtain this SMG just from playing the game as a world drop, so it can drop from any activity. You can also find it from Banshee in the tower sometimes. Maybe he'll sell it in his selection of weapons for the week. That is the NUD SMG. It's a primary SMG that you can slot in, so it pairs well with a lot of your secondary weapons. If you're using various elemental weapons for a particular activity like a Nightfall, or other activities with burns and things like that, It's a very solid SMG that feels pretty satisfying to use. I have a Feeding Frenzy Rampage one, so I'm gonna get a lot of really good perks that are pretty much staple to Destiny. So I definitely recommend it. Again, it's just a world drop, so you can kind of find it anywhere. It's a hockey weapon, so it comes with those unique hockey perks where it'll do more damage to like certain weapons and barriers and other things like that. So it's definitely a useful weapon if you're a brand new player and just hopping in and trying to find some starting weapons to get used to gunplay in Destiny. I think it's just a good SMG to get started with. The last weapon I want to shout out is the Retrace Path Legendary Solar Trace Rifle. Now, this trace rifle comes from the 30th anniversary pack for Bungie that came out late last year in Destiny 2. In particular, there's a activity from that pack called Dares of Eternity. It is free to all players, so even if you're a free-to-play player, you can just jump in and try that activity out and try and find this trace rifle. It's particularly good, again, because of this season with the solar subclass updates. You can do a lot of builds with this solar trace rifle to do a lot of fun stuff. On top of that, for endgame activities, Trace Rifle is the Overload champion mod for this season, and Trace Rifles will be pretty strong in endgame activities for that reason. In particular, I've been using this Trace Rifle with either Subsistence Frenzy or even Killing Wind Frenzy in some of my builds, and it's been a lot of fun to use. Here's an example of that actually, where in this gameplay here, where I've been using it with my Solar Hunter build, where basically I'm using all of my various abilities to proc Radiant, which is a new ability in there where it buffs your weapon damage for a brief period as long as you have that buff. So I either have my dodge roll, which is the little new Hunter flip that gives you that burst of radiant energy, and it can also be applied to your allies if they're in that vicinity. And I'm also using my throwing knife melee ability, where I will throw my knives. Defeating an enemy will make me radiant. They will also drop solar well mods, because I'm using some solar well mods to proc those. And then when I pick up solar wells, I get the solar damage boost again from those well mods, which then leads me to also getting the perk buff of Frenzy. As you can see, I'm stacking 3 different weapon damage buffs to the point where my solar trace rifle now here is doing almost more than double the amount of damage it would normally do. So you can just do some pretty nutty stuff with this trace rifle this season, just because you're able to proc all these solar abilities on top of procking other things like with all these various mods that I'm also doing in my build. So it's a very fun trace rifle, and it comes from that free to play activity, Dares of Eternity. So you can pretty much just run that activity and it'll drop for you, or you can accrue the strange coins that come from that activity and turn them in at Xur's treasure hoard, and it can drop from that chest in that room. So again, it's relatively easy to acquire. You don't need to pay for any extra modes or anything like that, or anything for the season, and you can just have this in your solar build for the season, and it's a lot of fun. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite weapons from Season of the Haunted, or just general weapons that have been enhanced by all of the new abilities and mods that are available this season. There's a lot of fun weapons. I'm sure people who have been playing a lot, you maybe have already found your favorite weapons from this season, either by crafting them or running the new activities and stuff. So I'd love to hear what you guys are using this season as well. Please feel free to leave some comments below about what you're using, and some of your favorite weapons from the season that you recommend to either current end-game players or maybe even newer players who are just getting started out. I definitely hoped some of these weapons I shouted out helps you guys out figuring out, what weapons to look out for. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching another Helm to Tower video, and we'll see you next time.